All right, kids, let's once again spin the big prize wheel and see where the night takes us. 5 states deciding whom they believe is best suited to hold the nuclear codes in his or her hand, while at the same time enjoying the only key to the executive washroom. Of course, we also believe there will be time to wash one's hands between stopping for a break and inserting the key, you would hope. We have reached the time of desperation for more than one candidate trailing in the polls. And that means seeing if pairing with the right vice presidential choice will make the difference. And yes, we understand Selena Meyer's people are in contact with Donald Trump, just in case. See if you got the reference. On a more serious and necessary note, when a person who knows says he believes Al-Qaeda or ISIS will strike in America before November, is he merely fluffing up possibilities, or are we indeed on the doorstep of another attack? The battle over something as inane as detergent pods and dim-witted parents who seek someone to blame for their mistakes. That's telling it like it is. And the lightning round question for you is a simple one. Will the Cruz and Kasich team make any difference tonight? Seeking intelligent discourse from start to finish? I'm Ed Berliner. This is The Hardline for Tuesday, April 26th, 2016.
Whatever has to be done to stop Trump. Yeah.
I'm sort of torn because I definitely do not like Trump or Cruz, but I also don't like the idea of people getting together and taking votes away from what the people want.
It's just somebody for right now to keep us entertained. Once the real work gets put into effect, he's not going to last.
That's politics, baby. You do what you got to do.
Just when you believed we'd reached the point of this presidential election process where nothing could surprise us, no one, not even Donald Trump, can say anything that will shock us anymore. Say perhaps if he suggested a real housewife as a running mate, which has not happened. Yet. We have reached the point where 5 states will make their primary decisions this evening. And it's at this point of the process where it would appear his only remaining challengers have suddenly awoken to the brilliant idea of joining forces to stop him. It only took them 6 months, hundreds of millions of dollars, and some of the worst timing imaginable to get us talking about it. And we all know this is going to wind up in a new episode of Veep this season, because the unintentional comedy is just too delicious to let it slide. We'll crack open the phone lines in mere minutes for your lightning round take on the pairing. But first, he is senior writer for the Daily Standard, Mark Hemingway, joined by the senior policy analyst for the Independent Women's Forum, Hadley Heath Manning. I thank you both for joining us. Mark, let me go ahead and begin with you. Ted Cruz and John Kasich getting together. They pretty much torpedo each other within 12 hours of announcing it. Have they pretty much just handed everything to Donald Trump with their complete incompetence?
Yeah, it's hard to say what's going to happen with this. I mean, to be honest, Cruz just needs about a third or so of Kasich's support to pull ahead in Indiana, which is his best chance of succeeding tonight. So, it's even throwing the possibility out there that for voters to think strategically, it may well have been enough for a third of Kasich voters to come over to Cruz and pull things out.
But is it not fair to say, though, Mark, that the people who are looking at this and they hear what the two sides are saying right now, and they look at how completely ham-handed this is, that you've got people who at one time said, I like Kasich, I like Cruz. Now they're looking at this and saying to each other, why should we bother with these two clowns? Let's just go ahead with Donald Trump at this point. It's what I'm hearing from voters.
Well, I don't know. My clown threshold here has been surpassed a lot more by Donald Trump than it has with how Cruz and Kasich have been acting in the last 24 hours. So I don't know if the Cruz and Kasich diehards are necessarily going to be that put off by it, even if they aren't exactly thrilled by how incompetently this alliance was allegedly forged.
Hadley Heath, let's go ahead and talk about politics here and people who should know their business. Ted Cruz and John Kasich have been around for a long time. They have a lot of very smart people working for them, a lot of very smart people who are telling them what they think should be done. When you think about what's been done up to this point from the beginning of their campaigns, and then now, when there are 5 states at work in the primary tonight to come up with this sort of an idea, I'm sorry, but you've got to ask yourself, is it the fact here that the candidates are scrambling and are basically throwing common sense to the wind here, or are they listening to the advice of people who have no clue what they're doing at this point, who are just dancing on the head of a pin?
Well, it's a very strange alliance when you consider just how different these two candidates are. Kasich and Cruz in terms of their tone, in terms of where they stand on many of the issues. They're not necessarily a natural alliance, but this, idea of being against Trump is nothing new, and voters have had this in their mind in several of the other states that have already voted. I've seen anti-Trump voter guides in circulation so that you know, according to which state you live in, which candidate you should vote for if you're only hoping to block Trump from getting the nomination. That's how divisive Donald Trump has been in terms of a character within the GOP. So even though it doesn't seem to make sense for Cruz and Kasich to be working together, when you look at the polling, the second choice of many people who choose Kasich or Cruz is going to be the other one and not Donald Trump. And so this is really just voters coming to a point, a realization that they're choosing between the lesser of different evils at this point.
All right, let's change the tone here a little bit. At a diner in Philadelphia, John Kasich defended his new alliance with Ted Cruz. Here's what he said.
I don't see this as any big deal, other than the fact that I'm not going to spend resources in Indiana. He's not going to spend them in other places.
Are you going to directly tell your voters in Indiana to support Ted Cruz?
No, we're not. I'm not going to go tell anybody how to vote.
Hadley Heath, let's go ahead and look at this from a different angle, okay? As far as we can figure out here, the Kasich campaign will stop campaigning in Indiana, clears the way for Cruz there. Cruz, in turn, will cede New Mexico and Oregon now to John Kasich. Is it not possible that this is the only thing that they can do? We are talking about working within the rules, and if you look at it, this is smart because it will stop Trump from getting to that mark, and it will force that second vote at the convention.
I agree. There's really nothing intransparent about what they're doing. They're being very forthcoming. Some people have called this a backroom deal, but I disagree. I don't think it's a backroom deal if you're being very frank with voters about where you're going to spend your resources and what your strategy is going to be campaign-wise. Every campaign has a strategy. Donald Trump's campaign has a strategy. Ted Cruz and John Kasich have a strategy. So what they're doing here is they're essentially revealing to voters what their strategy will be moving forward, and voters can decide for themselves how they feel about that.
Mark, a couple of minutes we got left here. Let's go ahead and turn left. Bernie Sanders, if you listen to and hear a lot of the different accounts that are coming out today, is pretty much preparing for a bad evening tonight. Look, the man still has a tremendous amount of money. He has a groundswell of support behind him, mostly from the youth of America. But still, is this Bernie Sanders Waterloo at this point? After things, if it happens as badly as we think it might happen tonight, does he then have to back up and say, okay, all I'm about is forcing a policy change and making sure that I become and my ideas become part of the platform for the Democratic Party this year? Make sense?
Yeah, but for a long time, the writing's been on the wall. I mean, the Sanders campaign has kind of been never give up hope about everything. And, I don't blame them. And they do feel like they're building a movement that's going to last beyond this campaign. But in terms of, what's happening now in the campaign, it's been obvious for a while that Sanders wasn't going to win. The real question looking forward is what's going to happen in November. I mean, are Sanders supporters going to be so upset and embittered by how they were treated and what happened? And there were a lot of shenanigans with the way the DNC treated the Sanders campaign. And toward the end here, I mean, things really did get tense. I mean, Sanders recently said something to the effect that he wouldn't tell his supporters to vote for Hillary Clinton in the fall. So it's just a question of how much lasting damage is done to the Democratic Party. I mean, I don't think it's going to be enough to stop Hillary, but it's not nothing either. You're going to have to factor that in as we move ahead.
So, Hadley Heath, I got about a minute left here. 4.5 million fewer Democrats have voted thus far than they did in 2008. Now, there's people saying that they're just waiting, they're biding their time, they're waiting to see what happens with Hillary Clinton. I'm not buying that. It sounds like there's something else going on underneath, and you got a lot of disgruntled voters sitting here right now. The question is, if Bernie Sanders is gone, do they automatically make a beeline for Hillary Clinton? I'm not so sure.
I'm not so sure either, but I think the bottom line comparing this election cycle to 2008 is that you've got candidates in the running that no one is particularly enthused about. Of course, there's a lot of youth energy around the Sanders campaign, but when it comes to other groups of voters that typically live on the left-hand side of politics, there's no candidate they feel like really speaks for them, really represents their agenda. And so there's simply not the excitement and the enthusiasm in this primary season.
All right, we want to remind everybody, if you want to join us throughout the show, go ahead and start lining up now. 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-NEWSMAX. We're going to ask you about Kasich, Cruz, all getting together and find out if indeed you think that this will stop Donald Trump. So let's go ahead and see if we can just bring this to a very simple close here. Mark, briefly, no matter how many times we talk, is it still just we need to get to the end of the day here that people are going to hold their nose, they're going to vote for the less stink that they can find come Election Day? Left or right, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it really is going to be an unusual election. I mean, I think there'll be more of a clear choice if the choice is Cruz or Kasich as opposed to Trump. I mean, Trump will certainly re-scramble the coalition a bit in terms of, Reagan Democrats and some blue-collar people that might otherwise vote Democratic might be pulled over to his side. But it's going to be. We have to remember that the general election electorate is a lot different than the primary, and it's too early to tell what's going to happen. But certainly there's a lot of apathy on both sides, I think.
30 seconds. Last shot to you, Hadley Heath. Hold your nose and vote.
I'd say that's what we've heard in the past several election cycles, and many voters are getting tired of hearing that they have to go to the polls simply to vote against someone. They want to vote for someone. And so I think this year is truly different. I think we're seeing something really seismic level changes in our political landscape, maybe for the worse, maybe for the better. That's yet to be seen.
Why are we still at the same place that we have always been, and we're just revisiting it over and over again? Hadley Heath Manning, Mark Hemingway, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Let's go ahead. We'll open up the lightning round. We only got about 45 seconds to go. Jack C. in Maryland, go ahead and join us here on the Hardline. Good idea, bad idea for Cruz and Kasich?
Oh, I think it was a very bad idea. First of all, it kind of just showed to me that Ted getting together with Kasich was the establishment altogether. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Donald has such a following, is because we're so tired of putting people in Washington that say they're going to do something and then they turn around and do it again. So it was just, to me, it was just Ted being a politician.
There we go. It's all about politicians being politicians, and that word establishment once again. Jack C. Maryland, appreciate you joining us here. Now, the real question is, of course, as this establishment goes on, is the establishment still going to have enough time to catch up to Donald Trump? When we come back, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, the possibility that they will attack here in America before the year is out. Pete Hoekstra is going to join us. Your phone calls more coming up on the Hardline.